Hello, middle school students. This is your second video of the week. Today we're going to be talking about mountain men in the wild, wild west. So this should be an interesting lesson for you. All right. More than 150 years ago, the white men came to explore the West. The West was full of beaver and muskrats. People in big cities throughout the world, like London and New York, paid a lot of money to wear hats and coats made of beaver fur. This gave trappers and mountain men a great incentive. Incentive is something you want enough that you're willing to work for it. Gave them incentive to explore and trap in the Rocky Mountains. Mountain men were the brave frontiersmen who explored the western lands unknown to the white man. They were pioneers, which means first people to settle a new land. They were the pioneers of the wild, wild west, and they loved adventure enough to risk their lives every day. American Indians both helped and harmed these men. An unfriendly tribe could take their lives, but a friendly tribe could save them. These men chose the challenges of the wilderness rather than life in cities and towns. The mountain men faced many dangers. There were no maps to guide their way, and the territory was home to dangerous animals that could easily kill a man. Sometimes these men chose the dangers because they liked being alone more than they feared what might happen to them. The mountain men learned that the American Indians could teach them to survive all seasons in the mountains. They learned how and when to gather food, and they dressed in buckskin like the natives. The mountain men pushed into Arizona's borders when it still belonged to Mexico. The Mexicans didn't like the American trappers, men who caught animals for fur, nor did they trust them. Sometimes they made life difficult for the mountain men. Some of the Mexican soldiers stole horses and furs from them. The mountain men deserve credit for blazing a trail through the American West. They risked their lives to explore America. Without them, we could still be east of the Mississippi. Unfortunately, their trapping caused a whole lot of harm to the ecosystem or the environment. So we must now practice conservation, the careful guarding and protection of the environment. So let's climb into a time machine and go meet some of these old-time explorers. All right, so let's talk about some of the mountain men. We have James Ohio Patty. My daddy was Sylvester Patty. He was a miner by choice, but I wasn't meant for mining. I had a hankering to be roaming and trapping. I trapped mostly beaver and muskrat. The West was chock full of them critters back then. I roamed all over the Colorado River, through your stretch of wilderness. I even trapped on the Gila River. It wasn't an easy way of getting by. We were attacked by Indians and had our horses stolen, and then we were put in jail. I guess you could say we were trappers. Ha! One time we were starving so bad we had to eat our dogs. Not many trappers wrote their stories down, but I did. Later on, a book was made out of the stories I wrote. Fancy that. Next, we're going to hear from William Shirley, Old Bill Williams. Bear with me in my accent. I'm trying to make it a little more interesting. I first worked with American Indians when I went to serve as a missionary. I married an American Indian woman, and we had 2 daughters. After my wife's death, I was so sad that I started on the path of self-destruction. How did I do that? Well, first I became a very skilled trapper because there was a lot of money to be made selling beaver pelts. I spent a lot of time alone trapping in the wilderness. My hair was red, but my heart was American Indian. I even dressed like a native. I worked under the hot sun and slept under the starry sky. When I trapped enough furs to pay my way, I sold the pelts to the traders. I spent my money drinking and gambling for weeks at a time. When the money was gone, I went back to trapping. I pretty much kept to myself. I tried to drink away my sadness, but I never could. Many people call me Old Bill. You folks in Arizona have a mountain, a stream, and a town named after me. All right, next we're going to hear from Jebediah Smith. I was born in New York, the son of a shopkeeper. I read the history of the Lewis and Clark expedition while I was a boy. When I was 23, I answered an ad that said, "To enterprising, bold, and not afraid of risk young men, we wish to engage 100 men to travel up the Missouri to its source for 1 to 3 years inquire of Major Andrews Henry. That was the beginning of my journey, which led me through parts of your modern-day Arizona. In the Rockies, a grizzly bear seized me, broke several of my ribs, and put my whole head in its mouth. The bear tore off most of my ear before roaring back into the wilderness. A young trapper stitched up my torn body. 10 days later, we were back on the trail, and I never forgot the lesson that grizzly bear taught me. All right, next we're going to hear from Pauline Weaver. I was born in Tennessee, way back when Missouri was called the Western Frontier. My mother was a Cherokee Indian. She called me Paulina Weaver, but I changed my name to Pauline. I never had no book learning, such as reading, writing, and arithmetic. Why I hanker to explore the land, I just can't explain. I ain't a man of many words, but I can out-trap most any old soul who would be fool enough to go against me. Like old Bill, I keep to myself as much I can. I'll take nature in her glory any day over a parcel of folks twitting about me. I know this wild country about as much as any man ever could. I helped those boys from the Mormon battalion when they were making a road across Arizona. I even helped work out treaties between the American Indians and the white folk. I think it helped that I was some of each. I was no miner, but I soon found gold alongside the Colorado and Gila rivers. I was a scout for the gold miners, who found the biggest gold deposit in Arizona. I guess you could say I'm kind of a buried treasure, myself, like gold. My grave is in Prescott, but my heart is in the Wild Wild West. All right, last but not least, we're going to hear from Kit Carson. My daddy named me Christopher Houston Carson, but I go by Kit. I was born in Kentucky, and I never had no schooling. Pa sent me to Missouri, but I ran as fast as I could to the frontier. Daniel Boone is my kin, and I reckon I got his Roman spirit in my blood. I started hunting, trapping, and doing any old thing to make my way in the Wild West. Word got round that I could take other folks most anywhere. John Fremont offered me $100 a month to take him exploring. Fremont's maps show country folk most of what they ain't never seen before. Lots of folks helped to find gold, but trapping was the real gold mine. We pretty much wipe out all the beaver and musket from one place and then move on to the next, starting again. In 1863, I was a colonel, an army boss, in the New Mexican Cavalry. General Carleton, who had no love for American Indians, ordered them to surrender and move to a reservation or die. This ended with a direct order that found me leading the long walk, a 300-mile march to a reservation. There were more than 8,000 men, women, and children, mostly Navajo, on that long walk. All right. Well, I hope you appreciate my cheesy accent. All right, on to the next theme. We're going to talk about beaver homes. Beavers live underwater. They build dams that turn streams into ponds. Once they've got a good pond, beavers build homes of sticks, logs, and mud by pounding the mud into the wood with their flat tails. A beaver enters his lodge or home from under the water, but the floor inside is dry. Beaver babies start inside the lodge until they're old enough to swim out on their own. After that, they build their own lodges. In the early 1800s, United States and European fashion experts put beaver hats at the top of their list. So if you wore a beaver hat back then, you were very fashionable. They were so expensive that only rich people could afford to buy them. The hat was made from the fibers found inside the fur. Beaver hats were great because they kept water out, held their shape well, and lasted longer than other hats. Top hats like those aren't popular today, but a good cowboy hat made with beaver felt will cost a pretty penny because you get what you pay for. All right, next we're going to talk about Yuma County. So before Arizona became a territory, Yuma County was part of a huge Dona Ana County that went into New Mexico. So at a certain point, it was part of New Mexico. After Arizona became a territory, it was divided into 4 counties. Some people wanted to call it Castle Dome County after the Castle Dome mine in Yuma. Finally, they decided to name it after the Yuma natives who lived in the area. Yuma County covers more than 6 million acres. The county seat is Yuma. Originally, mining brought many people to the country. Now, both mining and farming provide important jobs. There are many outstanding people who have lived in Yuma County, but one of the most famous was the late Cesar Chavez. Chavez believed strongly in justice for the migrant farm workers. Often they were mistreated and paid unfairly. Chavez bravely organized the farm workers into a powerful union called the United Farm Workers. All right. Did you know that beavers are rodents? They are the biggest rodents in North America. From nose to tail, beavers average 3 to 4 feet in length and weigh 40 to 95 pounds. Can you imagine a 95-pound beaver? Oh, that's big. Now that's a big rodent. Beavers have webbed feet that help them swim and long, sharp teeth that help them cut and chew food, and wood as well. Because their incisor teeth never stop growing, beavers always chew trees to keep their teeth from getting too long. So these are your incisors. I have very sharp ones and long ones, kind of like a beaver, but theirs would keep growing, okay? So once we have our adult teeth as humans, they don't grow anymore, except for your molars in the back. But your incisors stop growing. The beavers would keep growing. So in order to file them down or to keep them so they stay in your mouth, they would chew on wood, okay? Beavers also had 2 pairs of eyelids and 2 layers of fur. The outside layer has a special waterproof oil that allows them to dry quickly when they leave the water. Kind of like sweat wicking clothes, right? So when you sweat, the clothing will help wick the sweat away from your body. Beaver fur has a built-in comb to keep tangles out. They like to eat tree bark, water lilies, shrubs, bugs, twigs, leaves, and root. Yum. All right. Next, we're going to talk about the bald eagle, okay? So there are many kinds of wildlife in Arizona, including bald eagles. Honored for their strength and longevity, eagles are a symbol of the United States and are sacred to American Indian tribes. But as recently as 1995, bald eagles were endangered or close to dying out. Through careful preservation and safeguarding by environmental groups, bald eagles have increased in number and are no longer in danger of extinction. However, their lives are not without danger. Recently, 2 families of bald eagles along Arizona's Verde River suffered loss or lack of young. 2 bald eagle breeding spots in that area, the Ladder and the Tower, are closed during the season when the birds mate and hatch babies. This is because the nesting birds are sensitive. If the eagles feel disturbed during this time, it may cause trouble as they raise their hatchlings. Scientists have found the birds need at least 3/4 of a mile in every direction, undisturbed by humans, for their young to be born and grow up successfully. So these are pretty high maintenance eagles. Even then, there are no guarantees. This year, the eggs at the tower never hatched, and 2 nestlings, or babies, at the Ladder died before they finished hatching. When the breeding season is over, forest rangers open the areas early to hikers. Though the eagle's loss is sad, it is not the end. Bald eagles live up to 30 years, so they have many chances to try to nurture new generations to adulthood. All right, so that's going to be it for the video lesson. You guys are going to be scrolling down again to click on the quiz. You can print it out and fill it out and show me your answers in our Zoom meeting on Monday at 9:30. Or you can email me your answers as well. You guys all have my email address. If you do that and you've done last week's video, you're going to be entered to win a $25 gift card. All right. Also, make sure you are checking out Mr. Olmstead's choir project. We're doing a virtual choir project. So look for the link in your parents' email so that you can play a part in that. All right. So I look forward to seeing your answers. Hopefully you had fun with my video and you won't make fun of my accent too long. All right, guys. See you next week.